I'm Nima Rajan. The testimony given by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau at the Commons Finance Committee's probe of We Charity did nothing to reassure opposition MPs that there was no impropriety. In a sometimes testy exchange yesterday with Conservative MP Pierre Poilievre, Trudeau was forced to defend his wife's work with the charity organization. He said she had been cleared by the Ethics Commissioner and was only having her expenses covered. Trudeau said he initially hesitated at choosing We to run the Canada Student Service Grant, knowing his family's connections with the organization would lead to significant scrutiny. Opposition MPs now want to hear from more junior staffers in the Prime Minister's office and to get their hands on cabinet documents. The opposition is working to build a timeline on the government's decision to have We Charity oversee a student volunteering program. Statistics Canada says the economy grew by 4.5% in May as businesses began to reopen after severe lockdowns in March and April. In a flash estimate for June, the agency says the economy continued to grow at an annualized rate of 5%. Despite the 2 months of growth, after 2 months of negative readings, economic output contracted by 12% in the second quarter. The Bank of Canada's most recent economic outlook expected the second quarter of 2020 to be the worst than the first, estimating a 3-month drop in GDP of 14.6%. Meanwhile, more of Canada's big banks have announced plans to continue having most staff work from home. Royal Bank's Chief Human Resources Officer has issued a memo to staff saying most employees will have to continue working from home until at least 2021. TD Bank Group also says staff working from home have been advised that they will not return to the office before the end of the year. The Bank of Nova Scotia earlier told head office employees in the General Toronto area who are currently working remotely that they can continue to do so until 2021. Well, a new era is being launched today as the Royal Canadian Navy welcomes the long overdue HMCS Harry De Wolfe into its fleet. The vessel is the first armed warship to have been finished through the federal government's multi-billion-dollar shipbuilding plan. It is also the first of 6 new vessels purpose-built for the Navy to conduct military operations in the Arctic in the coming decades. Meanwhile, RCMP confirmed a robotic device found inside the Steinbach Law Courts yesterday afternoon has been destroyed. Police and firefighters arrived on scene shortly after a bomb threat prompted the evacuation of the courts and surrounding businesses. After a search, Mounties say they found a suspicious robotic device and called in the bomb squad. The squad then detonated it, with the explosion causing minor damage to the building. Staff Sergeant Harold Lanninga says nobody was injured and the investigation is ongoing. A May ransomware attack in a South Carolina-based cloud services company may have compromised the personal information of donors to at least 2 Canadian organizations. The Centre for Addiction and Mental Health in Toronto and Western University in London, Ontario, have advised benefactors that a ransom was paid by one of their service providers, Blackbaud, which revealed the attack on its own website earlier this month. Now, it's not clear how many of Blackbaud's Canadian clients were affected, but its website lists several Canadian foundations affiliated with hospitals, charities, and other not-for-profit organizations. Canadian National Railway says it has set a new record by moving more than 30 million metric tons of grain from across Canada during the 2019-2020 crop year. CN says more than 28 million metric tons of that grain was from Western Canada. The railway says it is prepared to move up to 7,600 bulk and processed hopper cars per week outside of winter, and up to 6,100 per week during winter in the upcoming crop year. CN says it has improved service thanks to insight and feedback from the agricultural community. Fighter jet makers are making their final pitches for why Canada should buy their planes to replace the military's aging CF-18 fleet, boasting promises of jobs and economic spin-offs. U.S. defense giant Lockheed Martin is the latest to emphasize potential economic benefits ahead of Friday's deadline for companies to submit their bids, which will see Canada spend up to $19 billion on 88 new planes. A new report commissioned by Lockheed Martin says up to 4,200 jobs will be created or sustained each year if Canada buys its F-35 stealth fighter, which the company equates to more than 150,000 new jobs over the life of the plane. Well, starting today, residents in Toronto and Peel region will be allowed to eat inside a restaurant and catch a movie in the theater. However, despite the lifting of certain restrictions, others remain in place, such as having to follow physical distancing rules and other health measures. The two areas join most of the province in Stage 3 of Ontario's economic recovery. Windsor-Essex is now the only area still in Stage 2, with health officials saying they want more data before moving ahead. Up next, a deeper look into the PM's testimony on We Charity. Stay tuned.
Because I feel it's pretty important to just not only look at one source of information, just to you have a whole wide world of information out there, so you have more than one place to look for. So if you're making your own decision out of just one source of information, then okay, that's fine, and you are making it yourself, but you're just looking in one spot. So it's always good to just have the whole story before judging and saying you already have the whole story in your head.
The White House has offered a short-term extension of a $600 weekly unemployment benefit before it expires on Friday. The benefit has kept families and the economy afloat during the COVID-19 pandemic. But Democrats rejected it, saying President Donald Trump's team failed to grasp the severity of the crisis. Moving to Iran, where the supreme leader says his country will not negotiate with the United States because America would only use talks for propaganda purposes. The Trump administration has said it is willing to talk with Iran with no preconditions, but that the U.S. will continue its campaign to pressure against the Islamic Republic. In a televised speech Friday, marking the first day of Eid, Mr. Khamenei said President Donald Trump would benefit from talks, saying Trump wants to use negotiations with them for propaganda, like he did with the negotiations with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. In Hong Kong, leader Carrie Lam is confirming reports that her government will postpone highly anticipated legislative elections, citing a worsening COVID-19 outbreak in the semi-autonomous Chinese city. The Hong Kong government is invoking an emergency regulations ordinance in delaying the elections. Lam says the move has the backing of the Chinese government. Pro-democracy lawmakers have accused the government of using the outbreak as an excuse to delay the elections, while anti-government sentiment is high. Meanwhile, a survey shows China's manufacturing activity edged up in July and export orders strengthened despite weak U.S. and European demand, in fresh signs that the world's second largest economy is gradually recovering from the COVID-19 pandemic. The monthly Purchasing Managers Index issued by the Chinese Statistics Bureau and an industry group rose to 51.1 from June's 50.9 on a 100-point scale. Numbers above 50 mean activity is increasing. The industry group said the results suggest that China's economy continues to maintain a rebound trend. The European Union has imposed its first ever sanctions, including travel bans and asset freezes over cyber attacks. It named 6 individuals and 3 organizations, including Russia's military intelligence agencies. Those who are sanctioned include alleged Chinese cyber spies and a North Korean firm connected with the WannaCry ransomware attack. The Russians were tagged for the NotPetya malware attack, taking down Ukraine's power grid and trying to spy on a chemical weapons watchdog. The economy of the 19-country Eurozone shrank by a devastating 12.1% during the second quarter from the quarter before, as the coronavirus lockdowns froze business and consumer activity. It was the largest drop on record. Spain, which suffered a severe virus outbreak that devastated its tourism industry, was the hardest hit, with a drop of 18.5%. Italy and Portugal were also hit hard, but no country escaped. It was the biggest decline since the record started in 1995. Meanwhile, the United Nations annual meeting of world leaders is going virtual this year for the first time in its 75-year history because of COVID-19. The only exception is the likely appearance by U.S. President Donald Trump. U.S. Ambassador Kelly Craft says Trump will be speaking in person in the General Assembly. Because of COVID-19, General Assembly members agreed this month to have each country's leader deliver a pre-recorded speech. A leading humanitarian group says a recent surge of violence in Darfur, the war-scarred region of Western Sudan, has deprived more than 14,000 children of medical care. Save the Children said it was forced to close 2 major health facilities and its field office in the village of Masterai in West Darfur. The UN has said a recent assault there killed 60 civilians, including 5 toddlers. Hundreds of Arab militiamen shot families and torched hundreds of homes, forcing over 10,000 to run for their lives and leaving residents in dire need of aid. China is celebrating the completion of its new satellite navigation system, something Beijing is hoping will rival the U.S. global positioning system. Chinese officials believe such a success could significantly boost their country's security and geopolitical clout. President Xi Jinping officially commissioned the system today at a ceremony at the Great Hall of People in the center of Beijing. France's economy shrank by nearly 14% in the second quarter when the country was in coronavirus lockdown. This was the 3rd consecutive quarter of negative growth in a worsening recession. The startling plunge of 13.8% in April-June compared to the same 3-month period in 2019, illustrating the economic cost of the 2-month lockdown. Well, moving to some good news now. This year's MTV Video Music Awards will include 2 new categories brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic: Best Music Video from Home and Best Quarantine Performance. Lady Gaga and Ariana Grande scored the most nominations with 9 each. Canadian artist The Weeknd follows with 6 nods. Fellow Canadians Justin Bieber and Drake will compete for Best Music Video from Home for Stuck With You and Toosie Slide, respectively. And that'll do it for your look at national and international news for today. Remember to take a look at some of our other programming right here on the News Forum website. Bye for now.